Hi, Gerre Heron out in the community, and we have the Sunny Slope Art Studio tour coming up again, and I'm out with artists, and I'm here with Vikki Reed. So Vikki, we have the art studio tour coming up, and I'm going to start with a bit of a mea culpa.
Okay.
So when it happened, the first art studio tour, and this is Larry and Ortega's and Sandra's, and I couldn't figure out why we had all these artists in Sunny Slope and no one was talking. So we had slope arts, we had art on the canal coming up, we had Gina Ruggiero with her creative drill sergeants, and somehow it was like, well, what is this, what's happening? And of course, you know, with Larry with not being great with his communication, and I couldn't get an answer out of Larry, so I decided what to do was just to go and film it. So, and it was, you know, bad technology back then. It was an iPhone 6 and I had a gimbal, and I literally just went artist to artist and, you know, asked if I could film them, and most of them came out great. And then I ended up at the end of the day exhausted at Studio 6020 is what it was called.
Yes.
And I filmed all the principals, and I missed you.
I know.
And I had no idea. One, I didn't know the artists, and I really wasn't sure about that. At that point of the day, I was really, really exhausted. So I apologize for that. And you know, well, we become, I think, great friends afterwards, and I become, you know, more involved with Studio 6020, and then now, of course, and now the Tay Martin with Kathy, and very involved with Kathy. So let's talk a little bit about your art generally, what you have done, and how did you end up doing art or getting into art and making it your business? I'm assuming it's your business.
So I've always drawn and painted, and even back in the day watching Mary Poppins, where they drew sidewalk art and they went on the adventures into the sidewalk. So that is really a strong motivator for my work, and a lot of my early work had paths in it, a lot of paths in it, so that you could take your adventure through the art. I did not think I was going to go into art for my career, because I did worry about starving artists. And so I was working at a job and went to take some watercolor classes at night with a gentleman called Paul Quo, who I call my painting dad. And he encouraged me, and he told me, you can make your living doing art.
Doing pieces or doing commercial art? Or
selling pieces.
Okay.
He was a watercolor artist. He brought his family here from Taiwan in the 70s, raised 3 boys, put them through college. His wife didn't work, all from selling his artwork. Okay. Now, he was a great artist, and I was just starting out. So, but he encouraged me, and in 1989, I quit my job to be a full-time artist. And my first show was a Fountain Hills show. And I was doing watercolor. He told me to pick a subject. So I was doing watercolors of the landscape, desert landscape, which then evolved into desert botanicals. And I did that for a while. In 2004, I got this really strong impulse, urge to do the mandalas. So
why are you smiling at me when you're saying that?
Well,
you know I'm skeptical.
That's fine. I was too. In fact, I was trying not to, I was telling it to shush, because I had a pretty good thing going. And I thought, look, people are going to think I'm weird and crazy. I don't want to do this. But the prompting was very strong, to the point of, I can't tell this story to people I don't know, but it was a point where I was stranded in the desert, and I got the message. It's like, do this. So I started doing the mandalas. It was 2004. I did mandalas from 2004 to 2016. I really thought that was my life's work, and I thought that's what I was always going to do. And something major happened in 2016. A few major things happened. I was working on the heart and soul mandala, which is, you know, heart and soul, that's pretty big. So I was working on the heart and soul mandala. I got the heart in there really, really well. What is soul? How do I represent soul? I don't know. So, but right then there was a tragedy next door, and it just knocked me to my knees, and I couldn't process it. And so...
Explain the mandala, maybe.
Mandala, okay, so mandala is just simply a Sanskrit word for circle, okay. But circle represents wholeness, circle represents the universe. The mandalas all were a tremendous learning experience for me, a school for me. They all taught me something. And I was doing the mandalas because I thought it was my gift to humanity. Turns out I was doing the mandalas because I needed to do the mandalas, starting with the first one, which was the healing mandala for the heart chakra, so healing for the heart. And once I finished the first 7, the next one that came out was the forgiveness mandala, and your eyes just fell on it over there, the reproduction. The forgiveness mandala was a huge learning experience, and I'm going to tell you a story, which is that shortly after I finished that mandala, my ex-husband came to my door with a little piece of paper that he read to me, and he asked me for forgiveness. So
you connect the two.
Are they related? You get to decide. In my mind, yes. Yeah. Do I want to try and convince you that they're connected? I won't.
Yeah. So I will tell you, as much as I am facts and figures, very grounded, and you know, as part of just being a Brit, I will tell you that I've had 2 experiences that may relate to sort of not mandalas, but you know, listening to or being affected by whatever's happening around you. So I had friends from Africa. I was born and raised in Africa, and they've known me since I was 19. And you know, I moved to England, they moved to England, I moved to America, they moved to Canada, and then they ended up in Montgomery, Alabama. And I would go down there for Thanksgiving every year, and we would go out hiking. So it was always November, so it was, you know, cool and what have you. We ended up one year at a lake where the water level was down, and there was all this amazing orange terracotta soil. And I don't know what it was about there. And we were doing the photographs, the 2 kids, this couple and myself, and I suddenly had this feeling that we were never coming back. All the years that we'd come down, just everything had changed. And I said to him, and I said, you know, we're not coming back. And Sheila, who's a devout Catholic, what is this? You know, what does this mean? I said, I have no idea, but I can tell you with absolute certainty, I know that we will never come back. And they had no plans to leave. And within the next year, before the next Thanksgiving, they had, you know, he'd lost his job and found a new job, and then moved. So the other time, so I listened to it, but I wasn't.
So you heard a knowing, you heard information or knew information without knowing how you knew the information.
Yes, with absolutely. So the other one was in 2019. So it was the Plein Air Art Festival that Casey Chevront had organized, and I wanted to support Lily and her, and you know, her work and Casey's work and the other artists there. So I was went on the hike on the Verde Valley Railroad, and then spent the night and ran off to it and filmed it. And the next morning, so there's Lily Lauren and Casey Schramm. We were at some diner somewhere, and of course the Sedona is orange, everything, you know, it's an overkill of orange. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just listening to the sort of gentle patter of these 2 amazingly talented artists talking, and you know, and good women. And suddenly I had the same feeling. And I said to them, and I said, you know something, everything's changed. I just, again, without absolute certainty, I just knew that everything was changing, because I assumed it was going to be for the better, because I had no idea, you know, within a couple of months,
Yes.
COVID would hit and the lockdown and all the rest of it. So it turned out to be complete change, and I was a realtor with Keller Williams, and, you know, I ended up deciding, you know, April 1st with COVID hitting, and I moved to HomeSmart. So everything did change, but, you know, not necessarily for the better.
Well,
Yeah. How do I explain that? I honestly, I don't know. But so, as much as I am not a woo-woo person, I will say to you that I am not a complete cynic, and that I'm still listening, and being in your atmosphere and with your knowledge and what have you is interesting.
well, so you had an inner knowing, and when you are quiet and paying attention, you can have inner knowing.
Yeah. So I would say to you that I think life sends you these clues.
Yes.
And you decide to pay attention, to listen, or walk out into that minefield. And it's literally, I'm not a religious person, and I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe it's just, you know, being on the earth and having longevity and sort of time and maturity and observation, and something that, you know, you cannot replace from reading in a book or you know, studying somewhere. Like, you need to have walked those miles, those years before you get to the point where you can sit and observe someone and get a feeling from them, good or bad, or just, you know, decide something doesn't feel right with this. This isn't a good situation or a good time.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the lockdowns and the COVID, because and this is a very personal question, that I felt of all the people that I knew, one of the people that really had a hard time being separated from humanity was you.
Really?
Yeah. So I know two people, and I could, you know, sort of read it in their eyes, and, you know, when I saw you, a couple of the you know, the Tay Modern showings, you know, launches, that, you know, this really bothered you. What, you know, this not being able to go out, not being able to interact with people troubled you.
I don't, well, the whole thing, yeah, troubles me quite a bit. And at the same time, the pandemic gave me an enormous gift, which continues to unfold, which is that I actually practice Qigong, and my Qigong practice deepened so much. And how that happened is that the people that I practice with actually live in San Diego, and I originally met them in Hawaii. So they're not here. And I've always practiced remotely. And what happened is that March 20th of last year, they started a Zoom practice in the morning, which we did for 100 days straight, twice last year. And through that, what was cultivated for me was an inner balance, an inner equilibrium that really helped me navigate the outer chaos. And that continues. In some ways, this year, I feel it's been a bit harder than last year. But it also is a matter of what's unfolding, and a matter of a natural process of things that come into our lives that we maybe need to look at, that aren't in our best interest to hold on to. And at the same time, my work is evolving again and changing again. So my work's changing a lot, which is always a little bit exciting but unnerving at the same time.
And I'm finding you, I think, in a much better place than you know, last year.
Yes.
You know, and you know, we're all forgiven for, you know, being put through that and how we dealt with it. So you mentioned that you had moved away from the Mandalas.
Yes. So what happened? It was July of 2016, and a number of things happened at the same time. Well, so there was a tragedy next door, as I said, that I couldn't make sense of. And 2 months later, a dog shredded my right hand, my painting hand. So I got bit by a dog, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to paint after that. And of course, it's all fine. And less than a month later, I was in the 13th and Northern shopping mall there, and I ran into Kathy Taylor, who was just setting up the Studio 6020. And I said, what are you doing in here? And she says, oh, we're going to teach painting. And I said, oh, what kind of painting? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, maybe I can teach watercolor here, because that was my medium. That's all the mandalas were in watercolor, all but two. And she said, acrylic. And I said, oh, I don't paint acrylic. And I said, wait a minute, maybe I could learn acrylic.
Opportunity.
So 2016, everything changed for me, and I never went back. I don't paint watercolor anymore. I don't paint precisely anymore. All the mandalas were so much precision and control.
Interesting.
And now I almost can't do that. I almost can't paint.
Too premeditated?
The premeditation isn't the thing, because all my work has an intention, and the mandalas were all driven. So the mandalas almost all started with an intention, which then was supplemented visually. So they're intention driven first, and that was my challenge then. When I heard you're to do a mandala on forgiveness, I thought, well, what does that look like? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to take a concept and make it visual. And so I'm kind of there again, because I know what I'm doing now is I'm taking a concept, and fortunately or unfortunately for me, it's an abstract concept. So I'm trying to take an abstract concept and represent it visually, abstractly. Okay, that's pure madness.
So it's a completely loose medium. I mean, literally you following instinct and whatever happens with
exactly
nature and items that you're using. So explain the technique, if you will, with the rice paper and the eucalyptus leaves and all.
So that's something I picked up along the way, because part of the fun of this is collage. So as you're working with the canvas or panel, you're applying paint, paper, any number of things, then maybe sanding it down, pushing it back, bringing it forward, pushing it back, until something develops that you connect with, and then you bring it all the way forward. So it's really a matter of dancing with or dialoguing with what's wanting to be created, more than imposing your will over what you're creating. So it's more of a collaborative creativity than it is, I'm going to paint a X.
Okay, so this is a rude mechanical question.
Yes.
What's the end use?
For the paintings?
For all, so the rice paper.
So the rice paper goes into the painting as there's probably some, I don't know if there's some, I guess maybe there's not.
But I mean, they are so, you've got art on both sides, they're transparent. They're almost, you couldn't put them in a frame unless you... No,
it's collaged. You're going to collage that to the piece.
So you're losing the back.
You're losing. So, but here, this is key. Decisions are made. It's just like life. Are you willing to let go of what you love to possibly find something that you love even more? And that's a constant letting go in this process of this kind of painting now.
Sounds a little bit like life.
It is like life, exactly. So that's what's happening. And
so would you ever mount that in glass on a frame that would be tabletop, that you could see both sides and turn it both sides?
Certainly that's an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my goal now is to be as non-attached as possible.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for the paintings, I'm already, so I showed you 6 in the works, and it was a very quick, free slash and dash, and I'm already attached, which is bad. So it's not good if you love what's on there so much you won't go back in and do more on top of it, because you've got to keep going, because it's not complete. It's not complete.
Right.
I know it's not juicy enough.
Right.
It's not rich enough.
So again, the end use framed wall hangings.
Yeah. So
okay.
So what is 2D art? Is there a purpose for 2D art? I think for some people it's not impactful. To me, it's tremendously impactful. And the impact I'm looking for from my art, and it's intentionally built into the art, is that the art nourish you visually with color, design, elements, and that you are benefited by having this artwork around.
So yeah, because I would say that if it speaks to you, it speaks to you. You know, what is good art? What is in modern art? And if it speaks to you, I often find that when I see the work that Kathy Taylor's doing with her teaching, and she puts them up, and she puts this, what is a photo collage of all the students' work, and I look at that and think, I don't want one piece. That somehow when you take that one piece, it has no voice. You almost want to buy all the pieces and sort of glob them on the wall and have it all talk to you at one time, which it's almost unaffordable to do. But with your pieces, I mean, there's so many of them with the rice paper that it almost feels like you can't take one of your babies or your puppies and give it away. It almost feels like you need to sell them by the dozen. And you need to make sort of like a color story of it, because there's so much in there when your eye goes around, and that's enjoying with that.
Well, certainly if you want to buy 12, we can talk.
We can talk. Yeah, you can understand that.
I can. Yeah. I think what you're responding to partly, and when you see Kathy post the classwork, is that there's a dynamic that Kathy's creating in those classes where, as I said, there's a collaborative creativity and a connection, and this is something that we're really wanting and needing to work towards, is that when we create together with an intention, magic happens. They're truly magical.
Isn't that interesting? And yes, I could see that. There's obviously some. Obviously there's tutelage, but there is some connection there because they all have different hands, and yet, they hang together.
Right. Yeah. Well, she's brilliant at creating a space where everyone gets to have their own voice and evolve into their own creativity in a very, very natural way. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
So COVID sort of ended Studio 6020. And
yes.
Tay Modern was born out of that.
Yes.
So what is your connection or relationship or involvement?
Well, I'm actually getting ready to do a show. Got a show there in February, March. That's going to be awesome. Called the Quantum Keys. And so this is your opportunity to
come and see
experience the keys to the quantum field.
Okay.
Because there is a field of consciousness, allegedly.
Okay. You can see the smoke on my face.
It's all fine. But the beauty of this is that there is a quantum field to which we all have access, and we access that field by relaxing and letting go, and not efforting and not striving, not by efforting, striving, and trying.
Okay.
So
you're going to chase me around the studio with your sticks and wands again?
I'm absolutely not, because that's stressing and striving.
Okay. Yeah.
You found those places very naturally. Twice you told me, you spoke of them, where you were in your element, your heart was full, you were with people you loved, and you naturally connected to that space because of your relaxed, loving feeling that you were having. Yeah. So that's the key to it.
So I would say part of it, I think, is paying attention.
Yes.
And maybe that's sort of listening to the voice in your head. And I think part of it is intuition. And I think the maturity and time aids intuition. You know, it could be, you can call it savvy, you can call it common sense, whatever, you sort of, you know, your mum's wisdom. But yeah, so yeah, and paying attention. But I did do massage therapies. I was a licensed massage therapist, and we did all the chakra and all the rest of it, and I honestly thought it was bumpkin. So I came out of that, you know, I was like, you know, my understanding was that, yeah, of course, you know, we're primal beings, you know, someone laying their hands on you and, you know, getting your blood flow, whatever, you know, it's wonderful. And, you know, the people that responded to me more were sort of, you know, middle-aged women who were sort of, you know, you have loving hands. It was like, who knew? But, you know, we had a, you know, demonstration on is it chakra with the ball, what have you, and it's that they couldn't get it to work. And I'm like, okay, fine, so this, but I, you know, as cynical as I may sound, I'm not totally outside of it. As you point out, I've had my own experiences, but I think part of that is, you know, you can go through life in a complete bubble, and all you see, and I think a lot of people, and I, you know, observe particularly roommates, that I sort of feel like they bump and grind their way through the home, let alone in life, and it's like, you've not seen this flower blooming, you've not seen, you know, how are you not seeing this? How do you not hearing, you know, the parakeets and their call, and how different it is, you know, in their aggression, you know, and their insistence in their tweet, and in the aggressiveness as they fly around. You know, it feels like a very anemic world to be in. But I'm sort of wonder if some people will go through life and never get to a point where they're in connection with themselves. And I think there are people, if you have, maybe it's sensitivity, maybe, you know, you grow the intuition, that you finally have a point where you can listen. And you seem to be very connected to that, but very connected to also yourself. And maybe that's because you've spent a lot of time very in-depthly within your art.
Yes.
Okay. So it's commercial successfully, if that isn't the rude question.
Is my art,
yes.
Am I successful
yes.
commercially?
Yes. Well, you're certainly successfully in your work.
Yes.
It's stunning and beautiful and amazing and colorful. I have to say that to you. I'm a guest in your home. But no, it is. I mean, it is. And I love being in your home with, you know, your color feature wall, and there is a depth in the color. And you're not threatened by color, which is wonderful. And you're certainly in the perfect state for that. I mean, yes. State of Arizona as opposed to state of mind, but maybe, maybe both.
The field of consciousness? Yes. Is that what you're talking about, Gerre?
Yeah, both of those, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So it is, you know, it actually was a great decision for you.
Yes, I don't know that I could have done it otherwise. I'm sure I do other work. I mean, it's not exclusively all I do, but it's the way that I connect the most effectively and deeply, I would say. So it's very important because I think we all need that way of connecting. If it's your garden, if it's going for walks, if it's cooking, if it's, you know, I don't know, writing, if it's whatever it is, to connect to that creative spirit so that you're lined up and things are flowing. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
So your comment about, you know, making the hard decision to, you know, be commercial, well, not so much be commercial, but to try and make a living out of your art. I did an art foundation course at Chelsea School of Art in London for a year, and it was, you could not apply for BA college without doing that 1 year, and you spent the year with all these disciplines. And the tutors of Chelsea wanted me to do a BA in fine arts. And the idea of being poor smelling of white spirits and riding around London with a bicycle with a basket in front was just not going to do it. And, you know, I was also a mature student. When I did graduate, I was 30. So I ended up doing textile fashion design. But my tutor at the time was Celia Birtwell, who, does that name mean anything to you? So it was Ozzy Clark's, they were divorced at the time, so they were 60s fashion designers, and she did all these amazing textiles. She still does all these amazing textiles, and of course, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Clark featured in David Hockney's work, you know, a few times. They were, you know, very good friends. So, you know, I made a commercial decision there, and I've never, anything that I've done in my life, I have never stepped away from being creative. So even, you know, I had many years in the fashion industry, and then I went into interior design, kitchen and bath design, and even in real estate, you know, my creativity is, certainly it's a people thing, but it's also the video, and I love the video and the editing and that part of it. So it's, you know, I've never stepped completely away from it, and I've always been a very thinking person, so I absolutely do appreciate that. What are you hoping to get out of the studio, Sunny Slope Art Studio tour?
It's a good question.
Certainly exposure.
Connect more people with the work I'm doing now, and possibly have people connect with the pieces that are from before and find great homes for them, because I still have some.
Is it also a sale?
Yes.
It is. Okay, so awesome.
So there's the studio, the Sunny Slope Open Studio Tour is happening in October, and I'll be at Tay Modern.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a show which will be completely different scheduled for Tay Modern in February and March. So
I think one of the wonderful things that I love about doing this is the people that you're surrounded by, the Cathys, and just, you know, Lily, Casey, just, you know, Joanne.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
You know, just, and it's heady conversation. It's in-depth mind think. So, you know, that part of it, I love. And, you know, I'm doing videos for free, and people ask me why, and it's like, because, you know, you're valid, you're out there, people reach out to you, and certainly it's lead generating for me, because it's sort of, they know you, hopefully like you, and certainly trust you, and, you know, it doesn't take you know, a few deals just to make it all worthwhile, but it just, there's, you know, you're with great people, and
yes.
you're with people who think deeply, and that's, you know, intoxicating, quite frankly.
It's a completely different way to go through life, as you said. You're hearing the difference in the bird tones. Are they aggressive? Are they happy? What's happening? Did you see that flower? Did you see the way the light was on that flower 5 minutes ago compared to the way it is now? It's a richer, more beautiful life, at least in my perception. It's not wrong to not see. It's just not the life I want to live.
Yes, it feels bankrupt.
You can see how it gets very dark for some people, and you can see, as you maybe observed in my face last year, that it was not as full.
Yeah, you can see it in the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the future for you.
Yeah. So right. Well, I am very, very excited, because so I've just gone through, and I'm in a course right now. It's online, but the original course was Find Your Joy. Now I'm in Find Your Voice for painting. And what she encouraged us to do was to really drill down and decide what we're doing, saying with our art right now, not what we wanted to say before, not what we always said, not the style we painted in, but what about now? And what do we want to create? And why do we want to create that? So it's very, very focused. And what risk are you willing to take? How many not good paintings are you willing to make on your way to making a brilliant, fabulous painting that's really, really saying what you want to say? So it's been very exciting. That started in June, and it's still going on. And I'm finding a lot of tooth, and I don't know, it's very thrilling to realize one of the traps I had fallen into was production. So I've got to make paintings. I've got to make paintings. And now I'm experimenting. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? This is good, but it's, is it where I want it? I'll take the risk of painting over it. Yeah, it was good. Was it exceptional? Not yet, not for me. So, and what do I want my art to say? What do I want my art to do? I've always wanted it to be beneficial, to provide nourishment for your soul. Now I have an even higher bar set for what I'd like the work to do. And, you know, it might do that, it might not. It might reach you, it might not. You might not respond to it. That's okay. But I know I'm getting more and more clear about what I'd like my art to communicate and why, and I will keep focused on that. So it's very exciting.
So that's you taking lessons, but you also give lessons.
Well, it's not really taking lessons. The interesting thing about this teacher is that she's only giving you parameters, such as work in a limited palette. You can work abstractly or non-abstractly. What do you want to explore? Originally, I thought I wanted to explore, well, abstract birds, and I've been exploring abstract birds. I'm coming to the end of a 100 bird series right now. Not that I won't still paint birds, because I probably will. But I also am getting more clear about I'm going to be moving into abstract. And I've been hesitant to do that because I've been afraid that I couldn't communicate what I wanted to communicate abstractly. I don't always understand abstract, so it's hard for me to understand how to communicate in a language that I don't know yet.
But your work is so spontaneous, so what's the difference between that and abstract?
Only that there's not an image for you to identify with. Like, oh, that's a bird.
Okay.
Now there's like nothing. Like, and for some people that's uncomfortable.
So I think it goes back to it talks to you or it doesn't.
Right.
Is this good art? When I look at the realist painters, Don Dean, Lily Lauren, Casey Chevron, their work is stunning. I think Don is very stylized and very appealing, sort of almost the impressionist. And I've had both Casey and Lily go, well, why don't you paint? And I'm like, oh hell no, not when I see the talent that they have. And it's like, no, I could never. It's too late. If I did it, I would do probably something with textiles, because that's my background, and it would be much more tangible and what have you than painting. And I quite frankly, I enjoy being in their atmosphere and in their environment and watching their work and being amazed by it. Yeah.
So there's this thing called compare and despair.
Okay.
So
hit me with it.
Yeah, don't do that. You're saying, oh well, why should I do that when they're already doing this? Well,
and doing it well.
Doing it well. Well, why should I make more art in the world? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm driven. There's a flame burning inside of me that requires that I paint. And if I don't paint enough, I'm not in a good place. Like if I go too long without painting, things become occluded. So there's something about connecting to that creative spirit that keeps me clear. And I'd say that's true for you. You just are connecting with it in a different way. Mm-hmm. But that's why you create, not because there's that you want to show the world that you can do this thing. There's just you have a message, you have a mission.
So let me ask you if sometimes your best work is in your worst times. I always think that you know, the troubled authors, the troubled writers. You know, when things are going good, they have writer's block. When things are terrible, they're driven to write and put it down on paper. And I wonder if with artists, when you look back at some of the works, maybe, you know, Van Gogh is a good example. I mean, always had tragedy in his life and did amazing work. And I wondered if you're in a very good space, how good and creative the work is.
I think it has to do more with how willing you are or unwilling you are to connect deeply with yourself. And for some, they're more unwilling to connect deeply with themselves when things are going poorly. For some, they're more unwilling to connect with themselves when things are going great. So it's really a matter of, are you willing to go in there and experience everything that's in there fully? And that can be extremely challenging. For artists, we have a benefit for creative people when things are going poorly. I can go in the studio and just, you know, fling paint around and not care, as long as I'm not focused on making a painting, which was part of my trouble last year. Because if you're only focused on making a painting and not on moving the creative energy, it can be, you can get really stuck.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of goes back to the age-old saying that the first brushstroke on the blank canvas is the hardest. You know, where do you put it down? Where do you start?
And then just go. But that's the thing. Just go. And that's the freedom I'm getting back. It's like, that part isn't important. Just keep. What did Andy Warhol say? Make art, and while people are deciding whether they like it or not, make more art.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Vikki, thank you. Looking forward to seeing you at the Sunnyspoke Art Studio tour. I'm really looking forward to seeing your exhibition at Tay Modern. I'm enjoying being involved, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you too. Thank you so much.